Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the exploration ship New Horizon, watching the stars drift by through the large viewing window. He had been doing this job for 15 years now, mapping new systems and looking for planets that humans could live on. It was peaceful work, the kind his great-grandfather would have called boring. But Jake liked it that way. The year was 5024, and humanity had not fought a real war in 3,000 years. Not since the Great Unification Wars ended in 2024 had human fought against human. There were no armies anymore, no weapons factories, no military schools. When people had problems, they talked them out in council meetings. When colonies disagreed about trade routes, they sent diplomats. When young people felt restless, they joined exploration crews like Jake's. Jake was 35 years old, tall and lean with brown hair and calm green eyes. He came from New Texas, one of the outer colonies where his family had been farmers for 6 generations. But Jake had always wanted to see what was beyond the next star, so he joined the exploration service when he turned 18. "Captain," called Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from her station near the communications panel. "I'm picking up something strange." Amy was 28, with black hair pulled back in a neat ponytail and dark eyes that missed nothing. She had grown up on Earth itself, in the old city of San Francisco, and was the best communications officer Jake had ever worked with. If Amy said something was strange, it was worth listening to. Jake walked over to her station. "What kind of strange?" "It's a signal, sir, but it's not like anything in our databases. Listen to this." Amy pressed a button, and the bridge filled with a series of sounds that were clearly not random noise. There was a pattern to them, like music, but not quite music. Like mathematics, but not quite that either. "How long has this been coming in?" Jake asked. "About 10 minutes. "It's getting stronger, which means whatever is sending it is getting closer." Jake felt a small chill run down his back. In 15 years of exploration, he had never encountered anything that might be a message from someone who was not human. There had been theories, of course. Scientists had always said that in a galaxy with billions of stars, there had to be other intelligent life somewhere, but no one had ever found any. "Dr. Bennett," Jake called to the ship's science officer. "Can you come take a look at this?" Dr. Carl Bennett was in his 50s, a thin man with gray hair and thick glasses who knew more about languages than anyone Jake had ever met. He could speak 12 human languages fluently and read ancient texts that most people could not even identify. If anyone could figure out what the signal meant, it would be Carl. Carl listened to the signal for several minutes, his face growing more serious with each passing moment. Finally, he looked up at Jake with an expression that was part excitement and part worry. "Captain, this is definitely artificial. Someone or something made this signal on purpose. It has mathematical structures that suggest intelligence, and there are repetitive patterns that look like they might be some kind of language." "Can you translate it?" Jake asked. "I can try, but it will take time. This is completely unlike any human language or communication system. It's as if someone took the concept of language and built it from completely different rules." Jake nodded. "Do what you can. Amy, send a message to Earth Command. Let them know what we found." "Already on it, sir," Amy replied. "But it's going to take 6 hours for the message to reach Earth, and another 6 for any reply to get back to us." That was the problem with space exploration. Even with humanity's best communication technology, the distances between stars were so vast that conversations with home base took most of a day. Jake had learned to make decisions on his own and report back later, over the next 4 hours. Dr. Bennett worked on the alien signal while the rest of the crew tried to act normal, but Jake could see the tension in everyone's faces. They all knew they might be witnessing the most important moment in human history. Finally, Carl called Jake over to his workstation. The older man looked tired, but there was a light in his eyes that Jake had never seen before. "I think I've got it, Captain. At least I've got the basic structure. This is definitely a message, and it's directed at us." "What does it say?" Carl's face went pale. "It's not good news, I'm afraid. The best translation I can manage is something like this. Primitive species of the third planet from the star you call Sol. Your expansion into our territory ends now. Submit to the authority of the hegemony or face complete destruction. You have the time of one rotation of your planet to comply with this demand? Jake stared at the translation for a long moment. They're giving us an ultimatum. That's how I read it, sir. And Captain, there's something else. I'm detecting similar signals being broadcast to at least 16 other human systems simultaneously. This isn't just a message to us. It's a message to all of humanity. Before Jake could respond, Amy called out from her station. Captain, you need to see this. Long-range sensors are picking up massive objects at the edge of the system. They're big, sir. Bigger than our largest colony ships. Jake looked at the sensor readings and felt his blood turn cold. The objects were clearly artificial, clearly ships of some kind, and they were enormous. Each one was the size of a small city. How many? He asked quietly. 17 ships, sir. They're holding position just outside the asteroid belt. Jake took a deep breath and tried to think clearly. In his 15 years of exploration, he had been trained for many emergencies. Equipment failures, asteroid impacts, solar storms, even contact with potentially hostile wildlife on new planets. But no one had ever trained him for this. Amy, get me a direct channel to Earth Command, Priority 1. Yes, sir. While Amy worked on establishing the connection, Jake thought about what this meant. Humanity had been alone in the galaxy for as long as anyone could remember. They had spread out to nearly 1,000 worlds, always assuming they were the only intelligent life among the stars. Now, suddenly they were not alone. And whoever these newcomers were, they did not seem friendly. The communication link to Earth crackled to life, and Jake found himself talking to Admiral Lisa Park, the head of Earth's Defense Council. Lisa was a woman in her 60s with steel-gray hair and sharp blue eyes. She had been a soldier in her youth, back when Earth still had soldiers before the Great Peace began. Captain Morrison, Admiral Park's voice was calm and steady. We've received similar messages from 17 different systems. Can you confirm that you have visual contact with alien vessels? Yes, ma'am. 17 ships, holding position at the edge of our system. They're enormous. There was a pause, and Jake could hear voices talking rapidly in the background. Finally, Admiral Park spoke again. Captain, I want you to maintain your current position and continue monitoring the situation. Do not, under any circumstances, make any aggressive moves toward those ships. We're going to handle this from Earth. Understood, Admiral. But ma'am, what exactly are we going to do? We haven't fought a war in 3,000 years. We don't even have a military anymore. Jake heard something he had never expected to hear from Admiral Park. She was chuckling. Captain Morrison, do you really think humanity spent 3,000 years sitting around forgetting how to defend itself? Do you think we spread to 1,000 worlds without making any plans for situations exactly like this one? I'm not sure. I understand, ma'am. You will soon enough. For now, just keep watching those ships and keep your crew calm. And Captain? Yes, ma'am. Don't worry. Humanity has been preparing for this day for a very long time. War Master Zechthel stood in the command center of his flagship, looking at the reports from his scout ships with satisfaction. The humans were exactly what his intelligence officers had predicted. Weak, peaceful, and completely unprepared for war. Zechthel was tall even by his people's standards, with dark blue skin and 4 arms that moved with deadly precision. He had conquered 43 different species for the Krillian hegemony over the past 2 centuries. Some had fought bravely, others had surrendered quickly, but all had followed the same basic pattern. They had military forces, weapons, and defensive positions. The humans seemed to have none of these things. Report, he commanded his chief intelligence officer. The human response has been broadcast across all their networks, War Master. They appear to be amused by our ultimatum. Zechthel 4 eyes narrowed. Amused? Yes, sir. Their leaders are actually laughing. Admiral Park of their Defense Council sent a public message saying, and I quote, 3,000 years of peace and you think we forgot how to fight? How adorable. Defiance based on ignorance, Zechthel decided. They will learn quickly enough. Begin the attacks on their outer systems. hit their weakest colonies first. When they see their people dying, they will submit. But even as Echthel gave his orders, something was happening throughout human space that his scouts had completely missed. Dr. Susan Blake stood in what everyone believed was her agricultural research station in the Vega system. For 20 years, she had been studying new ways to grow food on colony worlds, developing better crops and more efficient farming methods. Her station was known throughout the sector for its peaceful research and its beautiful gardens, but when Susan received the coded message from Earth Command, everything changed. "Computer, activate Heritage Protocol 77 Alpha," she said calmly. "Heritage Protocol 77 Alpha activated. Welcome back, Colonel Blake." The walls of Susan's research station began to move. What had appeared to be storage rooms for farming equipment opened to reveal manufacturing bays filled with sleek starfighters. What had looked like greenhouses transformed into launch tubes. What everyone had thought was a water treatment plant turned out to be a fusion reactor, capable of powering a small fleet. Susan smiled as she watched her research assistants reveal their true nature. Every one of them was a trained pilot and engineer who had been living undercover for years, waiting for this moment. The elderly botanist Dr. Gary Mills removed his fake gray hair to reveal himself as Commander Mills, a man in his 30s with the sharp eyes of a fighter pilot. The young intern Jenny Adams opened a concealed weapons locker and began distributing military equipment to the team. "Time to get to work, people," Susan said. "We've got a war to fight." Similar transformations were happening across human space. The cultural exchange hub near Alpha Centauri dropped its peaceful facade to become Fleet Command Central. The mining operations in the asteroid belt around Proxima revealed hidden weapons platforms. The retirement community on New Florida turned out to be staffed entirely by former military specialists who were nowhere near as old as they appeared. Colonel Ryan Hughes had been waiting for this day for 30 years. He stood in the underground command center beneath what everyone thought was a small farming town on the colony world of Haven. The town above had 50,000 people living quiet, peaceful lives. The facility below had 5,000 of humanity's most dangerous military specialists preparing for a war they had always known would come someday. "All stations report status," Ryan commanded. The responses came in from across human space. Manufacturing centers that had been disguised as civilian facilities were coming online. Hidden weapons caches were being opened. Ships that had been built in secret were powering up their engines. "Sir," reported Major Lisa Stone, "all Heritage Protocol sites are responding. We have full activation across 847 systems." Ryan nodded. The Heritage Protocol was humanity's greatest secret. When the Great Unification Wars ended 3,000 years ago, the peace treaty had included a hidden clause that only a few people knew about. Humanity would disarm its obvious military forces and present itself as a peaceful species. But they would also build a secret military infrastructure into every colony, every research station, and every civilian installation they ever created. For 3,000 years, humanity had been preparing for exactly this situation. Commander Elena Vasquez had spent the last 15 years pretending to be an asteroid miner in the belt around the star Ross 128. She lived in a small habitat with 200 other miners, who spent their days extracting rare metals from floating rocks. But Elena's mining ship was not really a mining ship, and her crew were not really miners. "All right, people," Elena announced over the ship's communication system. "Time to show these aliens what human miners can really do." Elena's ship, the Prospector, had been built to look like a simple industrial vessel. But hidden beneath its rough exterior was one of the most advanced warships humanity had ever designed. Its mining lasers were actually precision weapons capable of cutting through any known armor. Its cargo hold was filled not with extracted minerals, but with a squadron of fighter craft that could launch in seconds. Most importantly, Elena's crew were all veterans of humanity's secret military training programs. Every human child, starting from age 5, participated in what appeared to be games and sports. What they were actually doing was learning tactics, strategy, and combat skills through carefully designed simulations. By the time they reached Adulthood, every human was essentially a trained soldier, even if they never realized it. Prospector to all mining vessels, Elena broadcast to the other civilian ships in the asteroid belt. Time to earn our pay. Across the belt, mining ships that had been working peacefully for decades suddenly transformed. Hidden weapons emerged from concealed compartments. Civilian crews revealed military training that no alien intelligence service had detected. Within minutes, Elena commanded not a fleet of helpless miners, but a battle group that could challenge any force in the galaxy. General Peter Knox stood in a facility that officially did not exist, deep beneath the mountains of North America. On Earth, the facility was called the Heritage Vault, and it contained weapons and technologies that humanity had developed during their violent past but had chosen never to use. Until now. General, reported Dr. Nancy Wright, the facility's chief scientist, all systems are coming online. The quantum disruption generators are ready, the molecular disassembly weapons are armed, and Project Prometheus is standing by. Peter nodded. Grimly, Prometheus was humanity's ultimate weapon, originally designed as a terraforming system that could reshape entire planets in a matter of hours. But like all human technology, it had been designed with dual purposes in mind. It could create new worlds for human colonization, or it could turn enemy worlds into uninhabitable wastelands. What about the volunteers? Peter asked. Recruitment. Centers across human space are reporting numbers we never expected, sir. It seems that 3,000 years of peace did not make humans less willing to fight. If anything, it made them more eager to protect what they have built. This was perhaps the most surprising discovery of all. When the alien ultimatum was broadcast, human governments had expected their citizens to be terrified. Instead, they found that humans across the galaxy were excited. Not excited about war itself, but excited about finally having a chance to use skills they had been developing their entire lives without realizing it. Young people were volunteering faster than the military could process them. Parents were sending their children to safety and then reporting for duty themselves. Elderly humans who had lived their entire lives in peace were revealing military knowledge that no one knew they possessed. Captain Steve Rogers had been a shuttle pilot on the peaceful world of New Montana, ferrying passengers between the planet's surface and orbital stations. He was 30 years old, married, with 2 young children. He had never fired a weapon in anger or even raised his voice in an argument, but when the call went out for pilots, Steve reported to the local Heritage Protocol site and discovered something about himself that he had never known. All those years of flying shuttles, all those hours spent in flight simulators that he thought were just entertainment, all those racing games he had played since childhood had actually been advanced military training. Welcome to Squadron 77. Captain Rogers, said the officer who greeted him at the hidden military base. Your test scores indicate you're qualified to fly anything in our inventory. What would you prefer? Steve looked at the hangar full of ships that officially did not exist. Fighters that could move faster than anything the aliens had ever seen. Bombers that could destroy entire fleets with a single shot. Scout ships that were invisible to every known type of sensor. Give me something fast, Steve said with a grin he had never worn before. I want to be the first one to show these aliens what a human pilot can do. Meanwhile, War Master Zekthal was receiving reports. That made no sense. His advanced scouts, sent to attack what appeared to be defenseless human colonies, were not reporting back. The few that did manage to send messages spoke of impossible things. Civilian installations that turned out to be military bases. Peaceful farmers who fought like professional soldiers. War Master Zekthal stood before the massive viewing screen in his command ship, watching the largest fleet he had ever assembled move toward the human home system. 50,000 ships of every size and type, from small fighters to massive battleships that could destroy entire planets. This was the second wave, and it was 10 times larger than the force that had failed in the outer systems. The humans had surprised him once, but Zekthal was certain that no species could stand against this much firepower. The Sol system contained only one inhabited planet, An intelligence report showed it defended by a laughably small fleet of only 200 human ships. "War Master," reported his tactical officer, "we are approaching the edge of their solar system. The human fleet is moving to intercept us." Zechthel looked at the tactical display and almost laughed. 200 ships against 50,000. Even if the humans had hidden weapons, the numbers made victory impossible for them. "Open a communication channel to their fleet commander," Zechthel ordered. "I will give them one final chance to surrender before we destroy their homeworld." The screen flickered, and Zechthel found himself looking at a human female in a military uniform. She appeared to be in her 60s, with gray hair and calm blue eyes that showed no fear despite the overwhelming odds she faced. "I am Admiral Lisa Park, commanding the Soul Defense Fleet," the human said. "You must be the alien who thinks he can conquer humanity." "I am War Master Zechthel of the Krillian Hegemony," he replied. "You face 50,000 ships with only 200. Surrender now, and your people will be allowed to live as servants of the hegemony." Admiral Park smiled, and something about that smile made Zechthel uncomfortable. "War Master Zechthel," she said calmly, "you have made two very serious mistakes. First, you assume that what you can see is all we have. Second, you came to the wrong neighborhood." Before Zechthel could ask what she meant, the human fleet began to move in ways that defied everything he knew about space combat. Captain Steve Rogers was flying his fighter in the front line of the human formation when the battle began. He had been nervous during the approach, facing odds that should have been hopeless. But when Admiral Park gave the signal to attack, all his nervousness disappeared. Steve's fighter was called a phantom, and now he understood why. As soon as combat began, his ship activated systems that made it phase in and out of normal space. Alien weapons passed right through him without causing any damage. Meanwhile, his own weapons could strike enemy ships even while he remained untouchable. "This is incredible," Steve said over the communication channel. "I can see their shots coming, but they can't hit me at all." Lieutenant Kate Miller was flying a different type of ship called a swarm fighter. When the battle started, her single ship suddenly split into 50 smaller units, each one controlled by advanced artificial intelligence but responding to her thoughts and commands. "Kate to all units," she broadcast. "Let's show them what a real fighter squadron looks like." Her 50 mini-fighters moved through the alien fleet like a school of fish, too small and fast for the big alien ships to target effectively, but each one carrying weapons that could disable ships 100 times their size. But the most shocking moment for the aliens came when Earth itself joined the fight. Major Frank Castle was sitting in what appeared to be a normal office building in the city of New Geneva. He had been working there for 15 years as a city planning administrator, helping design parks and transportation systems. But when the alien fleet approached Earth, Frank walked to his desk and pressed a button that had been waiting for this moment for 3,000 years. "Heritage Defense Grid activated," the computer announced. "Welcome back, Major Castle." The city of New Geneva began to transform. Buildings that had looked like ordinary offices and apartments opened to reveal massive weapons platforms. The beautiful park in the city center split apart to expose an orbital defense cannon that was larger than most spaceships. The peaceful lake on the edge of town drained away to show a launch facility for interceptor missiles. Similar transformations were happening across Earth's surface. Every major city, every small town, every structure that humans had built on. Their homeworld had been designed with dual purposes. They were homes and offices and schools during peacetime. During war, they became the most powerful planetary defense system ever created. Frank coordinated the ground-based response from his command center, which had been disguised as a city hall for decades. Around him, men and women who had lived quiet civilian lives revealed their true training as they took control of weapon systems that could reach across the solar system. "All stations report ready," announced Janet Cooper, who had been the town librarian until 5 minutes ago. Now she was operating a targeting system that could track 1,000 enemy ships simultaneously. "Fire at will," Frank commanded, from Earth's surface, beams of energy reached out across space to strike alien ships that were still millions of miles away. The aliens had never seen weapons with such range and accuracy. Ships that had thought themselves safely distant from the human homeworld suddenly found themselves under attack from the planet they had come to conquer, but War Master Zechthil's greatest shock came when he realized that his intelligence about human numbers had been completely wrong. "Sir," his tactical officer reported in a voice filled with panic, "I'm detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system. There are not 200 human ships. There are thousands of them. What are you talking about?" Zechthil demanded. "Our scouts confirmed only 200 ships. They were hidden, sir. Stealth technology beyond anything we've ever encountered. They're decloaking all around us." On the tactical display, Zechthil watched in horror as human ships appeared from nowhere. They had been invisible, waiting in perfect position to surround the alien fleet. What had seemed like a simple attack on a lightly defended system had become a carefully planned trap. Admiral Park's voice came over the communication channel again. "Did you really think we would leave our homeworld defended by only 200 ships? Did you think we spent 3,000 years without learning how to hide our true strength?" Commander Tony Stark was in charge of one of the hidden fleets that had just revealed itself. His ships had been waiting in the asteroid belt, invisible to alien sensors, ready to strike when the enemy committed their full force to the attack. "All ships, weapons free," Tony commanded. "Let's end this quickly." Tony's fleet was equipped with weapons that the aliens had never seen before. Quantum torpedoes that could phase through shields and armor. Gravity cannons that could crush ships by increasing their weight 1,000 times. Energy beams that could disrupt the molecular structure of enemy vessels. The battle that followed lasted exactly 10 minutes and 12 seconds. It would be remembered in human history as the 10-minute war, though from the alien perspective, it felt like an eternity of impossible defeats. Human ships moved through space in ways that violated everything the aliens knew about physics. They appeared and disappeared at will. They passed through solid matter when it suited them. They split into multiple units and then rejoined seamlessly. Most disturbing of all, the humans fought with a level of coordination that suggested they had been preparing for this exact battle for years. Every move was planned, every attack was precisely timed, every defensive maneuver was perfectly executed. Lieutenant Ben Parker piloted a ship called a phase runner that could exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. He used this ability to attack alien ships from directions that should not have existed, appearing inside their shields to fire at point-blank range before disappearing again. "This is too easy," Ben reported over the tactical channel. "It's like they have no idea how to fight against our technology." Captain Diana Prince commanded a squadron of ships that could manipulate gravity itself. She used this power to grab alien vessels and throw them into each other, or to create gravity wells that crushed entire formations of enemy fighters. "Diana to Admiral Park," she reported. "We've cleared the left flank. Enemy ships are trying to retreat, but they can't escape our gravity nets." The alien fleet, which had seemed so powerful just minutes before, was being systematically destroyed. Ships that had conquered dozens of worlds were being torn apart by human weapons they could not understand or defend against. War Master Zechthil watched his fleet die around him and felt something he had never experienced. In 2 centuries of conquest, complete helplessness. His flagship was one of the few ships still fighting, but even it was taking damage from human attacks that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "All ships retreat," he ordered desperately. "Fall back to the outer system." But retreat was not an option. The humans had surrounded the alien fleet completely, and their weapons had longer range than anything the hegemony possessed. "Sir," his tactical officer reported, "we're trapped. The humans have us completely surrounded, and we can't break through their lines." A new voice came over the communication channel. It was Admiral Park again, but this time she was speaking directly to Zechthil's ship. "War Master Zechthil, your fleet is defeated. You have 2 choices. Surrender now and be treated according to human standards for prisoners of war, or continue fighting and be destroyed." You have 30 seconds to decide. The news of the Sol System disaster spread through Krillian space like wildfire. For the first time in 10,000 years, a hegemony fleet had not just been defeated but completely destroyed. 50,000 ships reduced to wreckage in 10 minutes. Warmaster Zekthal, one of their greatest military leaders, captured along with thousands of his officers, in the capital city of the hegemony. On the world of Krill Prime, the ruling council gathered in emergency session. 12 species leaders sat around a massive table, each one representing billions of subjects across hundreds of worlds. They had built their empire through superior numbers, advanced technology, and ruthless efficiency. No enemy had ever seriously challenged them. Until now. Supreme Chancellor Vexstar, leader of the original Krillian species, slammed his 4 fists on the table. His blue skin had turned almost purple with rage and fear. "How is this possible?" he demanded. "Our intelligence." Reports showed the humans as a weak, peaceful species with no military capabilities. How did they destroy the second wave? General Mordock, military commander of the hegemony, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. He was a member of the Zephyrian species, tall and thin with gray skin and large black eyes. His people had joined the hegemony 3,000 years ago after their own defeat. The reports from the survivors make no sense, Chancellor. They describe human technology that violates known physical laws. Ships that can phase through matter, weapons that manipulate gravity, planetary defense systems hidden inside civilian cities. Survivors? Asked Counselor Yilbeth, representing the insect-like hive species. How many survived from 50,000 ships? Less than 1,000, General Mordock admitted quietly. The council chamber fell silent. In the entire history of the hegemony, they had never lost a fleet so completely, but while the alien leaders struggled to understand what had happened, humanity was already planning its next move. Dr. Angela Turner sat in a room that officially did not exist. Deep beneath the mountains of Earth, she was the director of Humanity's Intelligence Division, an organization that most humans did not know existed. Angela was 55 years old, with short brown hair and sharp green eyes that missed nothing. For 30 years, she had been running the most successful spy network in galactic history. "Report," she said to the dozen officers seated around the conference table. Agent Lucas Wright stood up first. He was a man in his 40s who looked completely ordinary in every way. That was exactly what made him perfect for his job. For the past 20 years, Lucas had been living in the Krillian capital, posing as a simple trade representative from a minor human colony. "Ma'am, Operation Looking Glass is ready to activate. We have agents in position throughout hegemony space. Government offices, military bases, research facilities, even the Supreme Chancellor's personal staff." Dr. Turner nodded. "How long have our people been in position?" "The first agents were inserted over a century ago, ma'am. We've been preparing for this scenario since the early days of human space exploration. This was humanity's greatest secret, one that even most human governments did not fully understand. Every time humans had made contact with alien species over the past centuries, they had immediately begun gathering intelligence, not out of hostility, but out of caution. Humanity had learned during their own violent history that information was the most powerful weapon of all. "Activate all networks," Dr. Turner commanded. "I want complete intelligence on hegemony military capabilities, political structure, and economic systems. And find out which of their subject species might be willing to switch sides." Agent Sarah Kim was in position on the hegemony world of Talar Prime, where she had been working as a cultural researcher for 15 years. The local population believed she was studying their art and literature. In reality, she was documenting their military installations and government communications. When she received the activation signal from Earth, Sarah smiled. Finally, after years of patient work, it was time to show the galaxy what human intelligence agents could really do. "Computer, transmit data package Alpha 7 to Earth Command," she said quietly. The information that Sarah had gathered over the years revealed something that the hegemony leadership did not want their enemies to know. Their empire was not as strong as it appeared. Many of their subject species were unhappy with hegemony rule and would rebel if they saw an opportunity. Meanwhile, Captain Nicole Hayes was preparing to lead humanity's first offensive strike deep into enemy territory. Nicole was 38 years old, with red hair and fierce blue eyes. She had spent the last 10 years commanding what appeared to be a peaceful exploration vessel called the Voyager. But the Voyager was actually one of humanity's most advanced stealth warships, capable of traveling undetected through any known sensor network. Nicole stood on her bridge, looking at the tactical display that showed her destination. The hegemony's primary military shipyard was located in the Kepler 88 system, a massive installation that had been producing warships for over 1,000 years. "All stations report ready," announced her tactical officer, Lieutenant Robert Chun. "Stealth systems at maximum," reported Chief Engineer Mary Collins. "Course laid in and ready," said Navigator Paul Martinez. Nicole took a deep breath. This would be the first time in 3,000 years that humans had launched an unprovoked attack on another species. But after the alien ultimatum and invasion attempt, it was no longer unprovoked. "Take us in," Nicole commanded, the Voyager and her escort. Fleet of 20 ships moved through hyperspace toward their target. Their stealth technology was so advanced that they could pass within a few thousand miles of alien patrol ships without being detected. When they arrived at the shipyard, Nicole was amazed by its size. The facility was built around a small moon and stretched for hundreds of miles in every direction. Thousands of alien workers were building warships using automated systems that had been perfected over centuries. "Target analysis complete," reported Lieutenant Chun. "The facility is defended by a fleet of 500 ships and has planetary defense systems that could destroy any conventional attack force." "Good thing we're not conventional," Nicole replied. "Begin Operation Thunderstrike." What happened next would be remembered as one of the most daring military operations in human history. Nicole's ships used their stealth systems to approach the shipyard undetected. Then, instead of destroying the facility, they did something completely unexpected. Commander Alex Turner, Nicole's second-in-command, led a boarding party onto the shipyard itself. Alex was a specialist in what the military called strategic conversion, the art of turning enemies into allies. "Attention all workers," Alex announced over the facility's communication system, speaking in perfect Krillian. "This is Commander Turner of the human fleet. Your hegemony masters told you that we are primitive and weak. As you can see, they lied to you. The thousands of alien workers throughout the facility stopped what they were doing and listened. We offer you a choice," Alex continued. "You can continue working as slaves for the hegemony, building ships that will be used to oppress other species. Or you can join us in building a galaxy where all intelligent species are treated as equals." What happened next shocked even the humans. Within hours, over 80% of the facility's workers had accepted the human offer. Species that had been enslaved by the hegemony for thousands of years saw their first real chance for freedom. The few who remained loyal to the hegemony were allowed to leave safely in evacuation ships. The humans took control of the shipyard without firing a shot, but the real surprise came when the liberated workers began sharing information about hegemony technology and military plans. Dr. Kevin White, the fleet's science officer, was amazed by what they learned. "Captain, these people have been forced to build ships for the hegemony for generations. They know weaknesses in every design, every defensive system, every strategic plan." Within a week, Nicole's small fleet had grown into a coalition of dozens of species. The liberated workers brought their own ships, their own knowledge, and most importantly, their own desire for revenge against the hegemony. General Patricia Sanders was coordinating the liberation campaign from Earth Command. Patricia was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and steel blue eyes. She had been studying alien military tactics for decades, waiting for the day when humanity might need to fight a galactic war. "Status report," she requested from her staff. "Ma'am, Operation Thunderstrike exceeded all expectations. We now have control of the hegemony's primary shipyard and have gained over 50,000 alien allies. Captain Hayes is requesting permission to move on to Phase 2. "What does Phase 2 involve?" Patricia asked. Liberation of the entire Kepler sector, ma'am. Our new allies have provided intelligence on 12 hegemony systems that are ready to rebel. If we can provide military support, we could free millions of enslaved beings in a matter of weeks. Patricia studied the tactical displays showing human forces scattered across enemy territory. 6 months ago, humanity had been a peaceful species exploring the galaxy. Now they were leading a rebellion against the largest empire in galactic history. Approved, Patricia decided. But make sure our forces understand the rules of engagement. We're liberators, not conquerors. Any species that wants to be free gets our help. 6 months after the war began, President Helen Carter stood in the observation deck of the diplomatic vessel Harmony, watching the blue and green world of Kepler 442b grow larger through the viewport. This planet had been chosen as neutral ground for the most important peace negotiations in galactic history. Helen was 62 years old, with silver hair and calm brown eyes that had seen humanity through its greatest crisis. She had been president for 8 years, elected during a time when the biggest problems were trade disputes between colonies and debates about terraforming regulations. Now she was leading humanity through the end of a galactic war. Behind her stood Admiral Lisa Park, Dr. Carl Bennett, and General Patricia Sanders. These 4 people would represent humanity in negotiations that would determine the future of the galaxy. Status report, Helen requested. Ma'am, General Sanders replied, our forces now control over 200 former hegemony systems. The rebellion has spread to 37 different species. Enemy resistance has collapsed in most sectors. What about casualties? Remarkably low, ma'am. Total human military deaths are under 5,000. Allied species casualties are around 50,000. For a war involving billions of people across hundreds of worlds, these numbers are almost impossible to believe. Helen nodded. This was perhaps the most surprising aspect of the entire conflict. Humanity had fought the most successful military campaign in galactic history while causing fewer deaths than some individual battles from their own ancient wars. And the hegemony leadership? Admiral Park answered this question. Supreme Chancellor Vexstar has agreed to attend the negotiations along with representatives from all 12 founding species. They're desperate, ma'am. Their empire is collapsing faster than they can control. On the planet's surface, the meeting hall had been prepared for the historic conference. It was a simple building constructed specifically for these negotiations, with no weapons, no defenses, and no hidden technology. Both sides had agreed that this would be a place of complete honesty. Supreme Chancellor Vexstar arrived first, accompanied by the 11 other species leaders who had ruled the hegemony for thousands of years. They looked nothing like the confident conquerors who had sent ultimatums to humanity 6 months ago. Their faces showed exhaustion, fear, and confusion. Vexstar was particularly changed. His blue skin had turned pale, and his 4 arms moved with nervous energy. He had ruled the largest empire in galactic history, but now he was watching it crumble. Around him, when the human delegation entered the meeting hall, the atmosphere became tense. These were the beings who had destroyed everything the hegemony had built over 10 millennia, President. Carter took her seat across from the alien leaders and spoke first. Supreme Chancellor Vexstar, 6 months ago you gave humanity an ultimatum. You told us to submit to your empire or face extinction. Today I have an offer for you. Vexstar's 4 eyes focused on the human president. What kind of offer? Complete dissolution of the hegemony. Freedom for all enslaved species. Reparations for the worlds you have conquered. And the establishment of a new galactic government, based on equality and cooperation rather than domination. The alien leaders began talking among themselves in excited, worried voices. General Mordek, the hegemony's military commander, spoke for the group. President Carter, you ask us to give up everything we have built? Our empire has existed for 10,000 years? We rule over 500 species across 2,000 worlds. You cannot expect us to simply abandon all of that. Dr. Rachel Kim, humanity's chief negotiator, smiled politely. General Mordash, you seem to be under the impression that you still have a choice in this matter. Rachel was 45 years old, with black hair and sharp intelligence that had made her the best diplomat in human space. She had spent months preparing for this moment. What do you mean? Vexstar demanded. Allow me to demonstrate, Rachel said calmly. She pressed a button on her communication device. Commander Stark, please activate Project Revelation. Across the galaxy, something began happening that made the alien leader's blood run cold. Throughout former hegemony space, human installations that had been hidden for centuries suddenly revealed themselves. Commander Tony Stark was coordinating the operation from the bridge of his ship in the former hegemony capital system. Project Revelation is active, Dr. Kim. All sites are reporting successful decloak. What the alien leaders saw on the meeting hall's display screens was impossible to believe. Every major system in their former empire now showed human military installations. Bases that had been hidden for decades or even centuries were now visible, armed, and operational. How is this possible? Whispered Counselor Yilbeth. Dr. Kim explained patiently. For the past 300 years, every human exploration mission, every cultural exchange, every trade agreement has included the secret construction of strategic installations. We have been preparing for this scenario since we first learned that other intelligent species existed. Admiral Park added, every system you control has human installations capable of destroying your infrastructure within hours. Every planet you rule has human agents who can coordinate uprising among your subject populations. Every ship in your fleet has been infiltrated by human intelligence operatives. The alien leaders realized that their empire had been completely penetrated by human agents and military installations. They had never had real control over their territory. They had been allowed to think they were in charge while humanity quietly prepared for the day when they might need to take over. General Morduk asked the question that all the alien leaders were thinking. Why? Why did you spend centuries preparing? For war while pretending to be peaceful? President Carter answered honestly. Because we learned from our own history. For 10,000 years, humanity fought wars against itself. We learned that the only way to preserve peace is to be prepared for war. We hoped we would never need to use these preparations, but we were not going to be caught defenseless if someone decided to attack us. You planned all of this from the beginning? We planned for the possibility, Helen corrected. We hoped it would never be necessary. When you gave us your ultimatum, you made it necessary. The negotiations continued for 3 days, but the outcome was never really in doubt. The hegemony leadership could either accept humanity's terms or watch their empire be destroyed system by system on the final day. Supreme Chancellor Vexstar signed the dissolution treaty that officially ended the Krillian hegemony. With his signature, 10,000 years of galactic oppression came to an end. But the most important part of the negotiations was not the end of the old empire, but the creation of something new. Dr. Angela Turner, who had managed humanity's intelligence operations throughout the war, presented the framework for the new galactic government. The Galactic Confederation will be based on principles of equality, cooperation, and mutual respect, she explained. Every species will have representation based on their population and contribution to the common good. No species will rule over others. No worlds will be held against their will. The former hegemony species were offered full membership in the new confederation, with the same rights and responsibilities as everyone else. Most accepted immediately, grateful for the chance to be part of something better than what they had. Built before, 5 years later, Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel New Horizon, the same ship where the first alien message had been received. But now his crew was very different. His communications officer was still Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez, but working beside her was Subcommander Zectile, a former hegemony officer who had become one of humanity's most trusted allies. The science station was operated by Dr. Carl Bennett, working together with Dr. Vorthak, a brilliant researcher from one of the liberated species. Jake's mission was also different. Instead of exploring empty space, he was leading the first mixed species expedition beyond the galaxy's edge. searching for new worlds and new civilizations to invite into the growing Confederation. "Captain," Amy reported, "we're receiving signals from the Andromeda Galaxy. They appear to be artificial in origin." Jake smiled. "More neighbors to meet, Dr. Bennett. Dr. Vorthak, see what you can make of those signals." In his personal log that night, Jake wrote, "The war that was supposed to end humanity's expansion into space has instead led to the greatest expansion in our history. We now have allies among hundreds of species, and together we are exploring parts of the universe that none of us could have reached alone." On Earth, President Carter was reading reports from across the galaxy. Former hegemony worlds were reporting unprecedented prosperity and happiness. Species that had been enemies for thousands of years were working together on joint projects. The galaxy was at peace, but it was a different kind of peace than humanity had known before. This was not the peace of isolation that humanity had maintained for 3,000 years. This was the peace of strength, cooperation, and mutual respect. Admiral Park, now retired but still serving as an advisor, visited the memorial that had been built for the humans who died in the war. 5,000 names were carved into black stone, representing the price of galactic freedom. They thought 3,000. "Years of peace made us weak," Lisa said quietly to the memorial.